Good morning, Marianas and Micronesia. I'm Troy Torres, the guy who needs a haircut.
Happy Monday, and I'm Johnnie Rosario.
It is Monday, July 24, 2023, and when we come back, we're going to bring you only two segments today. There are no crime reports yet from the weekend that come with mugshots.
Now, where is Major? Come back.
I know, Major.
Come
Major
back.
Anton Ogden, please come back so Department of Corrections can run more efficiently. Hey, no dice on everyone else who works there.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody.
We appreciate you.
But you know. So we have two segments today. We'll be talking about our big story regarding the National Defense Authorization Act. Talk about some of the stuff going on in the Guam legislature today, as well as bring you some of that live coverage from session that's ongoing right now. And then we have some shout outs to give for some people who are making Guam very proud and popular, yes, in America,
yes.
in the contiguous United States, when we come back from this short commercial break.
Welcome back, and thanks for joining us.
Go ahead.
So this Moylan, or were you going to talk about something else?
No, we're going to bring up the leaderboard, the 76 leaderboard.
Okay,
Today's leaderboard says if you obey all the rules, you miss all the fun. And I generally agree with all the leaderboards that they put up, but this is not a good thing for me.
No, I am. I think they're talking about me. I had too much fun.
This is our former lives. So
yeah.
What I'm saying, so with me, it's like it's one way or the other. There really is no gray area with me.
Yeah.
If I start breaking a rule, it's like all the rules are going to be. And I'm one of those people who subscribes to the theory that, if you're going to get in trouble, you may as well make it worth it.
Shoot for the fence,
I know,
baby.
completely destructive behavior. That's why I've got to obey all of the rules.
Yeah.
That's my whole, and it's not that difficult actually. When you start to obey the rules, when you get to a point where you actually obey all of the rules, it's like not difficult at all. I'm in bed by like latest 10:30 at night.
You know what's my biggest habit that I still have from, being sober for 5 years, and it's still, I catch myself doing it, is always looking in my rearview mirror.
Why?
Because I'm seeing if anyone's following me, if there's any...
Oh, just like a reflex thing.
Yeah.
Even if you're not doing anything wrong.
Yes, even if I'm not doing anything wrong.
So when people say, right, when they're like, the only reason you don't want to do that is because you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Actually, it's just trauma. It's post-traumatic stress
Yeah, and I don't
disorder.
blame anybody but myself,
So today's leaderboard. Not for me. But for other people,
used to be.
Go ahead. Just don't break the big rules. Don't do anything unethical. There you go.
Okay, here we go. The Moylan Troy wrote a story about this Moylan and $34 billion. Okay, I had to read it about 3 or 4 times to understand. I had to break. So finally, I said, you know what? I'm going to ask Troy to break it down for me. So can we break this down?
Yeah, and to be fair, this story, the reason I said it was the biggest story that we've ever done is because this is the story that took the longest to research. and there was a period in the middle of this. I don't know if anyone noticed, but I wasn't turning out too many stories, and it was because I was just committed to this. So
I think
guess
the
we'll start
number is
with this.
34 this year.
34?
We got 34 million in the Mercy, the bingo, and we got 34 billion there in the.
So we'll start with the military buildup,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
So back in like 2008, 2009 or something, we got this announcement that there's a military buildup coming. And at first it was going to be, I think, a $20 or $24 billion buildup. It got whittled down to a $15 buildup, and then $15 billion buildup, and then it whittled down a little bit to a little bit less, right? And it was this buildup of a Marine base and taking components of Marine forces in Okinawa, bringing over to Guam what the successor regiment, or whatever it's called, of the force that came to Guam to liberate us from the Japanese occupation. Big deal, right? So it's this whole posture because the United States, not just military strategists, but also State Department people, like just the United States government foresees that over the next 100 years, the real action's happening in this area of the world, because you have the 2 billion people in China, the 1.8 billion people in India, the economy of Japan, Korea, the conflicts that are in this area, including North Korea versus South Korea.
Yeah, we need to beef it up.
Yeah, we got to beef it up, right? So
Yeah.
there's all this stuff, and so Guam and the CNMI are the closest American jurisdictions to these hotspots, and we're just like between 3 to 5 hours away. And then we have all of these allies. We have the rest of Micronesia, which is allied with the United States. You have Australia, New Zealand, the
Taiwan.
Philippines, Taiwan, Japan. Yes, so all of America's like allies that are important to this pushback
Security,
against
yeah.
the aggression of China and North Korea, all in this area. So that's why there's a military buildup, right? So in addition to that initial gigantic, it dominated discussions for a long time on Guam, right? And now they're having a divert airfield in Tinian that they're building. There's rumors of some sort of army thing going in Saipan. Rumors of even more buildup going on in Saipan. And then when we interviewed the Marine Corps last week or 2 weeks ago, one of the things that became clear, though they didn't confirm it, was that, yeah, they would like to
More
have
training.
more stuff
Yeah.
in order to accomplish or to fulfill their mission here. And that doesn't even include whatever it is that the Navy wants, and the Air Force, and the Army, and Space Force, and all that stuff, including a new missile defense system, right? So that new missile defense system to protect Guam, the CNMI, and to project American force in this area is part of what's called a Pacific Deterrence Initiative. It's almost like a new military buildup, kind of, so to speak.
Yeah.
And this one, the U.S. military has said over a 5-year period, FY 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28, they want to spend $34 billion in the political geographic area named the Indo-Pacific. So that's all of American assets and force in the Indian Ocean and in the Pacific Ocean, and they got specific about it. They said west of the international date line. So that cancels out Hawaii,
That's us.
so to speak.
Yeah.
It's us.
Yeah. All
It's
us.
CNMI, Guam,
Yeah.
Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Philippines, Korea, et cetera, right?
Right.
And the only American jurisdictions in that entire area west of the international date line is CNMI and Guam,
Us
right?
too.
Us too.
Us little peoples.
So
Munchkin land.
in the first year of this, and what is kind of amazing to me is I never heard Congressman Jim Moylan speak about this.
Right.
Such a big deal.
Yeah.
And the U.S. military saying $9.1 billion in the first year of the Pacific Deterrence Initiative alone, and that is fiscal year 24. I don't know if that's the first year of it, but it's the first big funding year. $9.1 billion supposed to be spent in the Indo-PACOM west of the international date line area. And so part of that is, according to that budget submitted by the president, I think it's $801 million for the Missile Defense Agency, which is here.
Yeah.
Big deal. There's $167 million for some Northwest Ramp something. I don't even know what that is. Do you know what that is?
I think it's our airfields.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know military stuff
Yeah.
more than I do.
Yeah.
And then there's $385 million for a blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I don't understand all this stuff.
So this
but
is
it's a lot of money.
separated from the actual buildup. This is new money.
I don't know if it's separated from the buildup, but it's new money. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to like dumb this down.
Okay,
Because
okay.
because I think we need to dumb it down for our
okay.
congressman too, and his team. Okay. Because this is a big deal. We didn't own if the deals were made, backdoor deals were made for this. Okay, can you finish because I want to get into what we lose out here.
I like what you say here about this is a big deal. And it's a big deal not just for our security and the security of our allies and our partners.
It's a big deal for small businesses out here.
For our economy, for families. Because what do we have? We have a struggling tourism industry. We have people who
Mind you,
are trying to get back to work.
These training facilities that our congressman gave up.
Well, we don't know what he gave up.
Oh, he gave it up.
We don't know what.
They're gonna train in Florida. They're gonna train in Alabama. Okay.
So this is what he did, and he didn't tell anybody. And there was no answer to this until we got an answer out of him because we were investigating this story. And he said the congressman's office said he was happy to have supported an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act. It was an inclusion that said that the Secretary of Defense shall study and prepare a report to Congress within 180 days of the passage of the NDAA. This is only the House version. It's not in the Senate version. The expansion of training, or of the PDI's training and testing area of application from, remember what I told you, west of the international date line in the Indo-Pacific region, right? Now he wants, this amendment will move at least some of that over to southeastern states.
Okay.
In the Atlantic Ocean. On a whole other side of the world.
So imagine how that conversation went down, Troy. Okay? They're buddying up with Jim Moylan over there, like, hey, bro, give us some of that funding.
That's what I think.
That's what that is.
That's what I think. I think, and he was just so enamored by the.
That's their. Hey, they're my friend now.
Hey, these are my friends. They are in high places. These are the power brokers of Washington, D.C. I'm gonna sit at the table with the big boys.
With the big dog. Well, you better put your big girl panties on. Because, so not only does this, they're going to take training facilities away from Guam, okay?
I think it's going to be FY25 forward.
It don't matter. It's getting taken away.
Is already budgeted.
Whatever our congressman did with deals, he did with them.
He opened the door for all of that.
And automatic, that was given to us. We didn't have to fight for it. We
didn't even know about it.
Okay, we didn't have to say we need it. The president is saying they need it. Let's do this.
More importantly, the military is saying that this is what's needed to secure our country
so here
and
it
the
is,
world.
Right?
Yeah.
Here.
And it has the residual effect of helping us.
Guam's pro-military. We don't have to beg. It's there, given.
But that's the thing. Jim Moylan always said that he's pro-military, pro-defense, pro-military.
I don't even think Jim knows what he is. Okay, wait. So.
And he doesn't want to answer our follow-up question.
Of course he won't. Of course he won't.
Yeah, he's saying they're saying his office is saying, oh, it's all there in our initial answer. No, it's not.
Okay, so let's just go back one more. Okay, let's talk about this. Our hotels get filled with these military men that come from all over. I get to see some of my family members, my friends that come because they have to train here for a week. And where do they stay? They stay at our hotels. Where do they eat?
Some of them become your sons-in-law.
Where do they eat, guys?
In our restaurants.
In our restaurants.
Or our fiestas.
They want to go buy the flower dresses for their wives and their children. Like, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And if you guys aren't calling the congressman's office, then we can't complain about it.
Well, I think people are I've been getting some feedback about it, right?
Okay.
And so I understand that chamber people
what
are
is-
calling up.
I want to know what Congressman Mike Nicholas has to say.
I'm going to be sending an email to Congressman Underwood, Congresswoman Berdallo, and Congressman Nicholas.
Okay.
Asking them about, this whole thing.
Okay.
And the lucky thing is, so the sucky thing is that Jim Moylan put Guam's stamp of approval on this thing. So now these people can, for the next 4 years, say, you know what, Guam said yes to this.
Yeah.
They can hold that over us. So if the Republicans ever control both the House and the Senate and the presidency,
They're going to take it all.
it conceivably could happen that it would be taken. Not the whole thing. Of course, it can't be the whole thing because the military needs the assets here.
Yeah.
But at least some of it. Some of it when you think about it, even if it was just $300 million out of $34 billion, right? That's $300 million that could have reopened the Guam ship repair facility. Or that's $300 million that could have built a lot of housing on the base so that these military folks are not renting in the civilian market and causing the cost of rent to be $2,450 a month or $2,205 a month. We all know that those prices are tagged to the military
base,
and
yeah.
Section 8. And so, of course, any bit of money that's taken away from Guam's ability to do things for the military is money that will affect our economy and our pocketbooks.
Right.
This is a big deal. You're absolutely right. The silver lining here, the good news, is that this section is not in the Senate version of the NDAA for now. I mean, don't get it twisted. There are still Southeastern senators who are Republicans and Democrats who are very powerful and need to bring the pork home to their communities.
Right.
So that they can be able to say during election time, I got this for our
Funding,
state.
yep.
And the other thing about this study, because Jim Moylan's office is saying it's just a study. No, it's not just a study. The study matures in 180 days after the passage of the NDAA. As soon as that study says, yeah, we can do some of this stuff here in southeastern states, they're going to put it into the next NDAA. They're going to put it into the next appropriation for funding from the PDI to go over to those areas. And so,
Yeah, let's hope Jim Moylan, please.
I should not have voted for that guy. I
regret it.
I have voter regret, for crying out loud. I am never ever gonna say who I'm voting for ever again because, like, if I choose the wrong person, at least I'll be able to lie to you all and be like, I didn't vote for that guy. Over at the Guam legislature.
Our legislature who believes that all government agencies they have to write a law that says what kind of font they are allowed to use, guys.
That's Senator Roy Kinata's bill.
Guys, we cannot make this up. So from now on, what?
Heretofore, hear ye, as Senator Roy Kinata proclaims, Times New Roman shall be the font for all government agencies.
I don't get it.
Palatino, Zaf's deference.
Arial Black.
Calligrapher.
Guys, what in the world?
We should make something up called Kinata-isms. Like
Yes.
dedicated to all the Roy Kinata dumb ideas.
Yes.
But he has some good ideas though.
Yeah.
And he is, I think the guy's heart's in the right place.
Oh.
But the font thing is a bit overkill. I don't think the font thing is it in today's session?
I don't know. It was part of that list.
Oh, that's right. I think it is going to be in session. Well, so in the Guam Daily Post today, they do a good job. It's a story by Jolene Tovis
About the Times New Roman?
about the overrides that the legislature is going to entertain. So the first, Senator Dwayne Sinicos's fireworks bill is an
What?
act to make Guam fun again. I'm not making that up. It's an act to make Guam fun again.
I want fireworks. I do.
I don't think that there are people on our island who should be able to handle fireworks.
Let them kill themselves off.
And I think I think it was legal at one time, and I think the legislature made it illegal because people were blowing their heads off.
Well, there's direction. You got to read the directions, guys.
You people do not read directions.
Well.
Come on. So Senator Wayne said because he wants to legalize fireworks. Anyway, the legislature is going to act on whether to override the governor's veto of that. And the senator says, I want to make Guam fun again. I just love that so much. I want to bring back something from my childhood. I know children and everybody would love and enjoy this. Oh, I just don't think children should enjoy it. Holding fireworks, I don't know about that. Bill number 7, this is the big one. This is the Chris Duenas bill. I believe like a whole bunch of senators voted for that, and it's to prohibit the governor from suspending constitutional rights during a public health emergency. So this is for the next one, which hopefully won't come for another 100 years or something, but we saw the governor exercise some extraordinary power during the pandemic. When you look back in hindsight, a whole lot of that was unnecessary, but I gotta say, with the information available at the time to the governor, I think a case could be made that she made the best decisions that she could, but some of them were over the top.
Yeah.
Like the roadblocks. I don't even know what that hoped to accomplish.
Yeah.
If they wanted to stop the spread of disease, but they were having National Guards people roll down the windows of cars and go face to face with
Telling
people.
them, go home.
Can I have your ID? Can I see your ID? What are you doing out here in America on an American road? The next one they want to override a veto of is Chris Barnett's Bill 136, which is a procurement DOE thing, and I don't understand it. What I'm guessing is that the governor vetoed it because it's Chris Barnett. Can you queue up? Can we just show our viewers what's going on in the session right now? Because they're live right now. Let's just see what's happening. Hey, it's Chris Duenas.
Because
Can you make it louder,
he went
Ole?
through this pandemic stuff too as a businessman, trying to provide for families, and having the same outrage over the way some things were handled. Madam Speaker, we even convened in this hall to pass a resolution to terminate the public health emergency. And I think some of our members didn't want to do it because of the fact that we had this thing over our heads saying, you're going to starve children because you're going to take away their SNAP. A lie perpetuated by some evildoers downtown. And that you're going to terminate the public opportunity to have the National Guard serve them. Another lie. So in this bill, we fixed that. We made sure that on the termination of public health emergency, in part or in whole. Because many fine states like Hawaii had no problem. No problem, Madam Speaker, with a good governor saying, we, the state of Hawaii, want to terminate our public health emergency. But we have a heart and we won't starve children. So we will renew that part of the emergency. We have nurses that are critical to saving the lives of our people. You know what? We're going to make sure we extend that ability to pay those nurses top dollar travel nurses so that we could save lives. A governor with some sense. A governor who understood I can use my power judiciously. Madam Speaker, as I close, I stand before you as an unvaccinated individual, of somebody who I felt was discriminated against and was treated like an outcast at some times because we were told that if you are vaccinated, you will not get COVID. And you will not spread COVID. Another lie that has been proven scientifically now. I remove myself from some of my favorite organizations because I was a dirty, unvaccinated person. And we have people from this island who now live abroad because they lost their jobs, because they were dirty, unvaccinated people. People of this legislature, please understand, it is important to amend laws when you need to. No law is perfect. Every bill that will be heard in this legislature will be amending, repealing, or adding to a law that's already on the books. This is no different, Madam Speaker, and I humbly ask this body to please vote in favor of Bill 737. Situs Masi.
Situs Masi, Senator. On Bill number 7, is there anyone else who'd like to be recognized? Senator Fisher, you are recognized.
Oh, it's a fiery argument by Senator Chris Duenas, the author of Bill number 7, which was vetoed by the governor, and now the legislature is considering an override. That was Tom Fisher. I was pretty interested in what he was going to say too. But we'll go to a commercial break. This part of Kandit News Live is brought to you by 76 Circle K Guam. It's my go-to. When we come back, we'll bring you our second and final segment, and then we'll let this whole legislative debate play out. Stick with us after this commercial break.
Bottom line is we're going to make you a better person. You're going to be healthier and fitter than you were before.
Welcome back. This part of our news segment is brought to you by Winchell's.
Yes.
And we've got a berry blast, very nice.
Very nice.
I think it's berry blast.
Strawberries, kiwi, blueberries, and acai with coconut and honey.
It's an acai bowl. It's really delicious. It's and it won't break the bank either. I think it's like less than $10 if I'm not mistaken. And it tastes pretty good.
It's perfect for the weather.
Yeah.
It's so hot out there, guys.
It was crazy hot this past weekend. Yeah, I do. What? Have you been looking at the weather forecast?
It's just hot.
It's just
It's so hot.
So I think it was yesterday. It rained, like it was a downpour, right? And I was like, man, I should sleep more. But then I was like, no, I'll get my Sunday started going. And then like at 6:30, you know, when the sun starts to come up, it stopped raining. And the sun came up in full force, just evaporating all of that, you know, ripeness of the earth and the people, you know? People need to wear deodorant. If you are not wearing deodorant, there is something wrong with you.
He is not talking about me, people.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Johnnie always smells good.
Okay, let's.
We just lost ourselves
okay, we
there.
got Guam Chamber meeting.
Oh yeah, the Guam Chamber of
It's
Commerce.
Wednesday.
Kevin Nguyen from the U.S. Small Business Administration is going to be their guest speaker, and their seats are filling up. If you're not a member of the Guam Chamber of Commerce, you're a sole proprietor, or you're in a partnership or a corporation, sign up. The membership sign up is very easy to do. You can even do it online or just call the Guam Chamber for a membership. And they got these. Johnnie and I go every now and then to these things that they have. It depends who the speaker is, but This one's Kevin Wynn, so we might actually go. And Kevin Wynn's from USSB, and he's public affairs for this whole Malwar recovery thing.
Yeah, and we should bring him he likes Winchell's everything, right? Is that he's the one?
Yeah. Yeah.
He likes the donuts. He likes
The clam chowder.
The clam chowder. He likes that. Or we didn't give him that yet. We should bring that to
I
him.
see him at Mass. He goes to Sunday Mass at 6 p.m.
Nice.
Yeah. And I think they're going to be leaving soon, him and Veronica Verdi from...
Yeah, on the 27th they leave.
But they'll be back, people. We're going to have another typhoon, probably, according to National Weather Service. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Prim.
Our head producer, Eric Rosario,
Just
is
came
here
in.
with us with our new 76 coffees because we just almost finished our old ones. And Isaac Mirabal Bull is at the producer's desk right now. The next thing we have is some kudos to a team of 12 to 15-year-old boys who made their way over to Sacramento, California for the Cal Ripken
Baseball.
tournament.
Yes.
It's
Wait, I have it here. Hold on.
what's it called? Like Wooland? It's some Wooland tournament. Anyway,
It is called. We're heading to Sacramento for the All-Star Tournament in Woodland. Tournament is from July 24th through the 28th. So I also wanted to state these guys that do this, the kids, they go about every year.
do they have to pay their own
since
way?
Yes.
They don't get GNOC support or
I'm
anything
not
like
sure to what effect,
that? Or Guam
but
Visitors Bureau?
mind you, the parent, at least a chaperone has to come. If my kid was 12 to 15, I don't want them going by themselves.
Yeah.
I want to be able to be there and go through and these boys are good. These kids have been playing baseball since they could walk.
I don't even know
know?
how to catch a baseball.
If you watch kids baseball, is way more interesting, more fun than adult baseball. I'll tell you that.
When I was a kid, like I will never forget the disappointment in my dad's eyes. Because my dad's favorite sport, the all-American sport, baseball, right? So my dad liked to play baseball, my uncles and all that stuff. And when he tried to get me to play baseball, and I was like, no. No, Dad.
I'll give the water.
I'm not going to. I'm not going. I'm not
I'll
going.
be the water boy.
And my dad, he
I
called
played
me.
baseball when I was
My dad
a
called
kid.
me some names, man.
I played baseball for Sinania.
But I won that argument.
Yeah.
You played baseball for Sinania,
Yeah,
for real?
Yeah.
Who were your teammates?
Paul Malacca.
You played with the boys.
Yes. They didn't have an issue with girls being on the team, and then the boys didn't want to be on the girls' team. You had to be tough, in order to get on the boys' team.
Thanks for raising that. In high school, right? I remember, this whole issue we have, this whole debate going on, like this gigantic fiery thing about restrooms and transgenders and all that stuff, right? I remember when I was going to high school over at JFK, it was 1995, I think it was, this is ages ago. There were, I think, 3, we called them transvestites back then. I don't know if that's still a politically correct term, but I'm going to use it because that's what we called them back then. They dressed as women every day, and they used the women's restroom. And no one had a problem with it. Like, it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
It was just like, I don't know, it just made sense. And none of the girls had a problem with it. But I can see the issue with, like, people pretending and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Whatever. But what my point is that sometimes society makes things
A big deal when you don't have to. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Next up, this came in, I don't know the dates that this cousin of ours, or nephew, or no, nephew of ours, Melvin Santos,
The one
won.
in the middle.
Nephew.
He's our nephew, my first cousin's son. His name is Melvin Santos. Parents are Roxanne and Melvin Santos of Agana. He won gold.
Congratulations.
Yeah. It's Portland International Open IBJJF Jiu-Jitsu Championship.
That's something in the middle.
That's my nephew Melvin in the middle.
So I was today years old when I learned that jiu-jitsu is the Japanese name for judo. I always thought it was just a new thing.
Jiu-jitsu?
No, yeah.
No,
I didn't know it was
jiu-jitsu's been
judo
around.
because remember what's his name? GNOC, Rick Blas. Rick Blas and the son, Rick Jr., have been judo champions for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that that's the same thing as jujitsu.
I think, yeah, I don't know either.
Well, anyway.
Yeah, well, you know,
No.
Congratulations,
I know,
gold medal,
Mel.
making Guam proud. So he doesn't live on Guam.
I have no idea.
the mom's side.
I haven't seen him though, but he.
Back there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But the dad lives here, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Melvin.
Yeah, over and again.
He's my first cousin.
Yeah.
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 All right. Let's take it back to the Guam legislature, and for the rest of the
Thanks,
show,
guys.
we'll let you guys see what's going on with our senators and their fiery debates.
You can travel
Our
during
mics.
session and go to every social function, every resolution presentation. That's not the real work. The real work is right here in this session hall. And we collectively should decide if this is the direction to go in. Is this the direction our people want us to go in? When we fail to listen, you know, maybe you can get away with it for a little while, but after a while, you know, people, that's why we have so many people now that are so jaded with our government. So many people don't even want to vote anymore. Look at earlier this year, how many people were on the voter roster that used to vote, don't want to vote, don't care to vote. How many of them got on a plane and moved and left? And I know a couple of them who had private businesses for many years on this island, a very close friend and a neighbor that just lived a few feet from me, that packed up their family and left. And one of them were here to testify against this bill, felt so angered by it and so disappointed by it and so frustrated with our government that they packed up their whole family and left. Why do we need to get to that point where our people's voices, they don't feel in this modern day of all our ability to communicate that they are unheard? Because we have leaders that are not leaders. Because we have leaders that cave in because they think, a day the governor, this is what the governor wants. Governors are always changing. And we've had some good ones. And we've had some you gotta, wonder. What happened was not right. When we allow these public emergencies from month after month, we abdicate our responsibility as lawmakers when we are allowing the island to be ruled by executive order. What trumps executive orders? Law. What is our main job? We're lawmakers. But when we continue to let it slide and do nothing, continue to say, oh no, we're not going to support this bill. We're not going to question the governor and what the governor and the administration's doing. We're just going to stick our head in the sand and then go out next election and promise our people that we're there to lead and represent them. Makes us nothing but a bunch of hypocrites. Our people deserve better than that. They deserve to have their voices heard. And even when I don't disagree with the position of someone out there, I give them credit for saying it. Because that is our job. Whether we agree or not, well, then maybe that'll influence the debate. And that's what we should be doing. We should be here to debate these issues. Not acquiescing our power to a single individual and then just sitting back and cruising for the rest of the term. Because there are a lot of things we could have done better. There are things we could have done smarter. And you know why we could have done that by deliberating it and having those discussions open and having our people be able to come into the people's house, as we so frequently refer to this session hall, the people's house. But how are they going to come in and express their concerns when we shut the windows and slam the door and lock it? Because we don't feel we should have any administration, or this in particular, come down every 30 days and say, hey, this is what we're doing, this is why, do you agree? If not, then we can decide from there if that's the way to proceed. Or do we want to change or modify it? Is this working for us or it isn't? Let's not make those mistakes moving forward. Because you know, guys, everything comes to an end every day that goes by. Goodness, I've been in 2 administrations. You blink your eye and it's over. And all of a sudden, all these important people that were directors, my God, you think they were the greatest thing that ever happened, like nobody else has been a director or a governor. I have to tell you, being in office is probably the most humbling experience I've ever had and continue to have while I'm here. There's nothing to be riding high about. I think the burdens we have to carry are great, and our responsibility is even greater. So I fully stand in support of this Bill 737. I thank my colleague, Senator Chris Duenas, for his persistence. You know, standing up for what you believe in is never easy sometimes, especially if you think the tide is against you, but you know what, you still stand, and you stand strong. And I commend him for his continued efforts, and certainly definitely support him in the passage of this bill. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Taitagui, you are recognized.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker, for that little delay there. You know, Madam Speaker, I stand in full support, like I've done before, on a prior bill that did the same thing, and I'm sure that we had much debate to discuss the first bill, and it came at a time where things were heightened. You know, we were going through COVID. A lot of people were frustrated. But nothing was more frustrating than not being a part of the administration in making decisions for the people of Guam. If I recall, Madam Speaker, there are 3 branches of government, 3 branches that should be working together during something so important, something that has devastated our island. But the biggest part of this was we were never involved as a legislature. Why? Why is that? It should have never been done. We should have all worked together as a body, not this body, all branches of government working together, keeping involved so that we can be part of the solution, part of ideas to recover from something so devastating as COVID. And Madam Speaker, you and I both know, and we heard from FEMA that, you know, that we might have had a typhoon about a month and a half ago, but there might be another one coming down the line because of the way the waters are heated in the Pacific right now. Well, that's the same from any other virus coming in our way again. You think this is going to be the last time something like COVID could happen to us? Well, we better be prepared. People, now's the time to be prepared. So people won't think that we're shooting from the hip, that we're being reactive instead of proactive. Well, this is proactive. We are becoming proactive. We are preparing ourselves. And this is an opportunity to do that. In the public hearing, I had some concerns with the bill. Some of my questions were, does this bill violate any federal law? Will any questions regarding the governor's organic authority arise? Could this bill present legal challenge? And I was happy to hear, Madam Speaker, that this bill, this particular bill, does not. It is not inorganic. That was the biggest question on the last bill. But according to our legal counsel, it is not inorganic. This now will provide the strength in our government to provide transparency, branch cooperation, improve public trust. I think that's all we want right now, because I'm sorry, the show that happened during COVID, we lost so much of our people's trust in our government. So much. This will create inherited checks and balances of an executive declaration as well. You know, executive orders can be a viable tool for responding to public health emergencies. But executive orders also have their weaknesses. Example 1, limited duration. Public health emergency executive orders have limited duration, which can create uncertainty and instability. 2, potential for abuse, as we've seen. Executive orders can often issued by governors or other executive officials without the input of the legislative branch or other stakeholders. This can lead to a major concern about abuse of power, which many in Guam believe can restrict civil liberties while imposing significant economic burden. Without proper oversight and transparency, executive orders can be viewed as arbitrary and undemocratic. Lack of enforcement. While executive orders provide legal authority for the state government to take certain actions, there may be limitations to their enforcement. For an example, if individuals or businesses refuse to comply with an order, it can be challenging to enforce the order without resorting to legal action. And of course, my greatest concern was the concern whether the bill is organic. And I was assured by our legal counsel once again that this bill is organic. We have the power to do so. This bill makes sense. This bill allows us to be proactive, to prepare ourselves for whoever is going to be the next governor. Well, we have another 3 years for a new governor, but we can't predict the future. Other than a sci-fi book that was authored in, I think it was I'm not mistaken, 1989 about, and they even used the word COVID. It was a sci-fi book that was put out. I mean, nobody ever thought something like that would happen to us in the world. We just had a taste of it, my friends. So now's the time to ensure that whoever has the authority for an executive order, that they include all branches of this government. Let's bring back the people's trust in our government and put into place laws that do just that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, is there anyone else who'd like to be recognized on the bill? Senator Perez, on the bill, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think it's important, I'm hearing all the discussion now, and it's important to look back during the pandemic. And, those were scary times. I remember when COVID first hit, there was a lot of fear in the community, and there was even, reports about how this pandemic could grow exponentially. And there was an estimate that it would kill 3,000 people in a short matter of time. And so when we're looking at, we're now in this position where we're out of this public health emergency. And, it's important that we are doing this, looking back and evaluating, what can we do to our laws to make sure that we're more resilient based on our experiences that we've had. I understand there was a huge divide, our community was divided in regards to whether to vaccinate, to enforce vaccination or not. And there were many issues about mobility, being able to move within the community. And so in looking back too, a lot of these things were not static. You know, the virus itself, as we know, is that, as with many viruses, it shows historically that the first virus to come through a community is the most infectious, perhaps the most harmful, and over time it evolves to a much more, a less, you know, we've seen that actually being documented. There were many variants, and there were changes and changes in the virus itself, but ultimately the virus did, you know, change in potentially in a way that it was less harmful. That's what we see happen. That's a trend throughout pandemics. And so, you know, when we're in the pandemic itself, it's really hard to have this sense of perspective. You know, what is the right thing to do? You're always second guessing yourself. But what we have to hold on to is what is best practices, right? What are the best practices to handle a public health emergency? There's no guarantee what we experience today is going to be the exact same thing we experience tomorrow. And, you know, I think it's important that we proceed with caution and use the best scientific expert advice to guide us forward. You know, vaccinations have been proven to prevent illness spread. And this is something that, you know, we can't deny. We can't deny that medical history. You know, although there was a huge polarization in our community today. And so there's no, you know, if we had a crystal ball today to say, okay, you know, this is what we can do for the future, you know, perhaps, yes, we can be more clear and definitive in our bills. But I think when we write these bills, you know, we're codifying something that may have, you know, if we're not flexible, I think it's important that we keep the community in mind through all of this. And I know there was a lot of malcontent about the lack of transparency when it came to expenditure of funds, and that I share that same concern. But, you know, ultimately it's like, what is it going to keep our people alive too? And so I do have some reservations about this. I mean, and the other thing to keep in mind is that, you know, Guam is step in step with the federal government in regards to the policies. And I think that's one of the things is like when we're trying to figure out what we're doing here, you know, what is the federal government doing? And so they didn't you know, end the public health emergency till much later. It wasn't, you know, they weren't going month to month. You know, a lot of things they were scrambling. Like they were still figuring out how are they going to, you know, create a vaccine? How are they going to produce the vaccine? How are they going to disseminate it? So a lot of that was in the works. There was no clear path, and it was pretty much we were adjusting to things as they were coming in, especially in the early days. And so my concern about the 30 days in Section 3 of the bill, where it automatically is terminated by the legislature, you know, I feel that a pandemic is not, it's a dynamic thing, right? In the beginning, we're fumbling, we're trying to figure it out, we're trying to adjust. Making these life and death decisions is not easy. And more so, taking the responsibility for the whole community is even a bigger responsibility. And I mean, we've been through, you know, Mawar just recently, and having to call the agency heads to answer. I mean, we all understood that they needed to be out there to restore water, to restore power. And so we were very sensitive to that. We were sensitive that that was the priority. They needed to go out there and, you know, restore our community. And so when we're putting this 30-day automatic termination, I have reservations because, you know, look at now, we're still, I believe we're still restoring, you know, we're trying to restore the community back to its original prior to Mawar. You know, I understand that there has to be a dialogue, but I also understand that when it comes time to really address the issues immediately, there's less time to come down here and present information. I understand the intent of this legislation, but I would prefer much more flexibility, because we know these things are dynamic. We don't have all the answers, and we will not have all the answers. And so I do ask for a little bit more consideration about, you know, more flexibility, because we're codifying this. This is going to be in law, should it be passed, right? This will be codified for the next pandemic, public health emergency. And we don't know what's out there, what is coming our way. 30 days, I think, is too short. Yeah, so I ask for more flexibility in that, considering what we as a community went through with the public health emergency, and just how, you know, we've been through a series of things, and we haven't had to have a breath, really, a good breath from the, you know, we just came out of pandemic. Now we went through Mawar. You know, it seems like one trauma after another. And it's, to have 30 days, I think, is a little bit too tight to be able to respond to, you know, all the things that we're going through. You know, I know we all believe that we're a resilient community, but even our resilient community needs time. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing more of the dialogue. Or, yeah, I look forward to hearing the dialogue. Zuzmasi.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, we're still on bill number 7. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on the bill? Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do not stand in support of this bill. Frankly, as a senator, I would be embarrassed by this bill. This bill is a redundant bill for ineffective and lazy politicians. There is already a mechanism to end public health emergencies. All this bill does is it allows politicians to not do the work, to not make their case to their colleagues that a public emergency needs to end. You see it in the rhetoric, the lazy rhetoric of anybody that don't support this bill, they're just a stooge for Adelup. That is ridiculous. I myself, as a freshman senator, have overrode the governor's veto 3 times now. I bet to say, if we looked at the record, I've probably overrode the governor's veto more than some people that have been here since Moses. So, this bill, if it doesn't pass, it's not because we're in the tank for the governor. It's because it's a bad bill. It's a bad bill. It's a lazy bill. There's already a mechanism to end public health emergencies. And just because some people don't have the fortitude to get it done does not mean we need to change the rules to suit their inability. We want to talk about the voters. This has been litigated here publicly for like 4 years now. The people have heard this argument. And what happened? After the election, the minority got smaller. Maybe you should guys consider you might be out of touch on this one. So, this bill is unnecessary. If we want to end the public health emergency, even I, as a freshman senator, have the ability to do so. Do the work. With that, I yield the rest of my time.
You're very welcome, Senator Parkinson. Anybody else on the main motion? Anybody else? Senator Barnett? Was that a half raise or?
Yeah, it's sorry. Thank you.
Proceed.
Thank you, Madam. I'd like to thank my colleagues. It's been a very interesting debate, almost like hopping back in a time to where I don't want to go. And I think this whole conversation, this discussion, this debate on this bill, which is it's a very polarizing bill, obviously. But I feel like if we take out the idea that this bill is about this governor, or that this bill is about this legislature, and we instead remind ourselves that, in my humble opinion, this bill is about a governor and a legislature. There's a saying, hindsight's 20/20, and it's a cliche for a reason, because anybody can look back at anything and really find fault with it. And this is coming from someone who wore 2 surgical masks, a face shield, and earmuffs while broadcasting in a little radio studio that was about 10 by 12. This is coming from someone who was inoculated not once, but twice with the vaccine. But I didn't do it because I was brainwashed. And I didn't do it because I'm a sheep. I didn't do it because I wanted to fall in line with the governor. I did it because the doctors were saying that it would be necessary to protect our manamko. And I go around a lot of manamko. So that's why I did it. And I don't want to go back to the division that I saw in our community with the vaccinated and the unvaccinated and the restrictions that, as time really got to passing, the deeper we got into the pandemic, the more we crawled out of it. Yes, of course, so much of it was questionable. So much of it didn't make sense. But I can't sit here as someone who, in the pandemic, someone who preached caution, who preached safety, who begged our island to comply with a lot of these executive orders that we're talking about. But I didn't do it from a place of we all have to fall in line and listen to the Magahaga because it's the Magahaga. I did it from a place of we're a community that has always cared about each other, that has always come together during difficult circumstances, that has always done whatever we can to protect the most vulnerable in our community, and that was my motivation. But of course, at the time, we didn't have a lot of information to work with, and there was a lot of fringe information that was coming from people who, again, at the time, just seemed crazy. But now that we've had so much time pass from this pandemic, I understand, I even empathize with a lot of the arguments that are being made on the floor. And I think that this bill is not about, for me anyway, it's not about this governor and this legislature, because our heads are causes already from bumping heads with this administration. And it doesn't have to be that way, of course. And so when I look at this bill and I look at the situation we're in now, I don't know if we're going to go through another pandemic. And just reading some of this bill, I remember when they closed the churches. I remember because it was the first time I cried on the radio. And I cried on the radio because I had Father Paul on the show, The Link. And I had asked Father Paul to pray for our people because they couldn't go to church. So I definitely share a lot of the emotion about this issue, but I think in removing the emotion and just looking at the black and white of it, I don't think it's about a power check. I don't. I think it's about checks and balances. I think that decisions of this magnitude relative to states of emergency, extensions of states of emergency, and I know there were many times in the pandemic, especially as we began to wind out from some of the surges where, as a member of the media back then, we would wonder, is this still emergency? Are we still in an emergency? Do you think she's going to extend it? What do you think she's going to do? Oh, I think she's going to extend it another 30 days. Oh, is that what you think she's... And these conversations were all centered around what one person was going to do or not do that would impact and affect our entire island. And I want to... Father Eric in his sermon for the Liberation Mass had said that, you know, we can talk hot, we can make our points, and it's great because not one person is responsible for making decisions that all of us have to live by, and that's why I'm likely to support this bill, because I agree. I think that if we are going to be in a state of emergency, we have to work together. And that's what the people of Guam want. They just want us to be able to work together. They don't want us to all think the same. They don't want us to all talk the same. They recognize our differences. In fact, I think that they appreciate our differences and in some cases celebrate our differences. But those differences should never, ever keep us from coming together at the same table and making decisions that are good for our people, or talking about and debating and discussing decisions that aren't good for our people. The art of pleading your case. And again, if you just take out the idea that this is another one of this governor versus this legislature, Kalan PXC, are you ready? Let's get it on. No. It's not. To me, the black and white of it is, hey, if you think it's an emergency, and I have an amendment to address some of the concerns of the previous speaker about just that 30 days, but if you think this is an emergency, then come and not convince us, but talk to us. There's so many situations that could have been avoided if we just talked about it. And I think this bill does a lot to get past that unwillingness that we all know is there, this unwillingness to put our differences aside. I think this bill addresses the willingness that too many of our elected leaders have to dig their heels or their dory into the sand and not budge. Someone had asked me in the lead up to this, what would you do if you were governor and you had to go down to the legislature every 30 days and tell the senators, this is why this is an emergency and this is why I want to be able to do this, or this is why I want to be able to do that? What would you do? I would do it. I would come down. And it reminds me of yes, I'm going to say it, it reminds me of Eagles Field. We begged, pleaded, open the books, come on down to the people's house, let's work on this together, show us why it's a good deal for the people of Guam. The same, I believe, should be true for declarations of states of emergency. But I too have issues with 30 days. Because if we look at the situation we're currently in, post-Typhoon Mawar, 30 days And I know it was a long time, seemed like 30 years for most of our people without power and water, but 30 days goes like that in the blink of an eye. I don't even think there's time for a lot of response to be stood up in 30 days. And so I think I've been able to discuss where I stand on this bill, and I'm trying to discuss it reasonably. I don't feel it's an attack on anyone's authority. In fact, I think it's we're just reasserting again, as we often find ourselves doing in this body. It's a reassertion of our rightful role as a separate and co-equal branch of government. And I have an amendment also. Yeah, and so my amendment is basically changing the 30-day requirement that the A governor come down to the legislature and plead their case. I would like to amend that to 60 days. I feel like that's a good compromise. And it's already in the drive. Thank you. So I'd ask my colleagues to please support that amendment. Like I said, I feel like it's a good compromise. I had initially wanted to go for 90 days. Yeah, and I know that's something that had been discussed before, but yeah, I'm just throw it out there, 60. Let's go for 60. Do I hear 60?
No.
All right. Thank you, Madam.
On the motion, there is an amendment. I will address Senator Chris Duenas on the amendment as proffered by Senator Barnett. Please proceed.
Situs Masi, Madam Speaker, and already heard an objection in the gallery, so pretty exciting day today. I support the amendment. As a matter of fact, a colleague who actually sat in that same chair of our Senator Nelson made the same amendment on Bill 1136, and it was reasonable. And the good senator mentioned that the reason behind the amendment was because of her service in the military and as a guards person. It's called a battle rhythm. You establish a battle rhythm when you get into the heat of the battle, and that gives you a little time to get set up. It makes sense, Madam Chair. You know, I just wanted to address two things that I think are important, and I'm glad for the mover of the amendment and his dialogue on the bill. You know, it is true. This is absolutely not about our current governor. It is about the position of the governor. I just know that I had an impassioned speech on the bill because those are the realities that I felt and the realities that many people expressed to us. And without saying that, then I can see how I can be called lazy and it's unnecessary. But we tried, and it only took a day and a half, Madam Speaker, for this primarily civil defense, because that's who we're dealing with here. We don't need directors from every single agency to come down here. That's why we have a civil defense. That's why JIC stood up for almost 3 years, Madam Chair. That's the job. Our job is to get the answers. The job is to have these agencies, particularly these 100% federal funded agencies that are charged with emergency response, to do it. But it is in context with what the good mover of this amendment is saying. Get your battle rhythm, let everything settle down, and I agree also on the issue of how much we deal with the unknown. That's absolutely true too. But this bill doesn't challenge science. This bill does not terminate. It says, unless not renewed. That's a big difference between termination. Automatic termination, just like our insurance policy. I just renewed my car insurance the other day. Good thing I remembered, because it's only a couple of weeks and I don't want to get pinched. But that terminates unless I go in there and say, hey, how we doing? You know, we got the same deal this year, or can I save a little money? And extend another year my insurance on my vehicle and my home. So that's what we're talking about here. So important because words matter and what legislation calls for matters. But I am completely in support of the bill. And we'll just make one more point, Madam Speaker. Yes, MOAR. What did we do in MOAR? Came in here really quick, passed a bill, giving the governor the ability to use $50 million to respond to any and all of these issues associated with MOAR. We were here for a couple hours. Done. We're not asking to come in here and build Rome when we're trying to discuss a public health emergency, but we're asking for the reasonableness, particularly down the line as these things go forward. Always important to realize what the bill does, and I'm glad the mover of this amendment, had that level head in discussing this, that this is not about, let's get ready to rumble. It's about let's get ready to do the work. And that, in my opinion, is the absolute opposite of laziness. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. On the Barnett Amendment, anyone wishing to speak? Speaker Therese and then Senator Fisher.
Thank you. I support the amendment. It changes the legislature's concurrence with an emergency from after 30 days to after 60 days. Today's July 24th, Typhoon Mawar struck Guam May 24th, approximately 60 days. And I think that is a good amount of time to come in and really decide whether we should still be under an emergency. And I just want to remind everyone that the reason why that's important is not just because of certain authorities the governor might have, but the entire government is able to operate under emergency orders sometimes for procurement. And I think those were some of the things that were questioned during the last emergency. And those are the things that I think we should just be very clear. And I'm going to speak on the bill itself, but as to the 60 days, I find that very reasonable. I think we want our governor to be able to respond very quickly and thoroughly and wipe out any threat that we can control and to protect the people of Guam. But I do believe that the legislature should be involved, and so 60 days is actually pushing the outer edge for me, but I would support that amendment. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Speaker Terlahi. Senator Fisher, I will recognize you for the amendment as proffered by Senator Barnett. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I guess I can live with 60 days. I would prefer 30, but if 60 will get this thing across the finish line, then I'm going to support it. 30 to 60 is not that small a leap. I have to kind of share a personal anecdote. In my former life, I had a law firm, and we represented individuals who were incarcerated in various hotels downtown for 15 days pursuant to the governor's declaration of emergency, which was no small thing. And we went to court on many cases, successful on some and not so successful on others, to get these people out. You have to remember that functionally the writ of habeas corpus was suspended as to these individuals. It's called the Great Writ. It's the thing that keeps the government from throwing us in the can for no reason. But it was essentially suspended for those individuals, so we had to work hard on that one. Another thing we did, and I think people have forgotten it because it's kind of faded into the past, is how many hundreds of businesses shut down and were not given any compensation, although our law firm, fought against arguing a takings clause, but the attorney generals at the time just moved heaven and earth to stop us because, the government was going to have to pay a lot of money for this seizure of property. If you shut down my business, you've seized my property as far as I'm concerned. I wonder if many people knew that bar owners, club owners, small mom and pops, they couldn't afford the rent for their business, and they couldn't afford the rent for their home or their mortgage, so they ended up sleeping behind the counter at many of the businesses, just doing anything they could to stay open. It was a catastrophe for them. And an earlier senator, a senator earlier spoke about the number of people who left Island. They were left with no choice. They had to leave Island. It was that or starve. I don't know that we, as a body, moved heaven and earth to protect them, but thank goodness we do have a bill now that will allow us to do that. Another speaker earlier suggested that this was a lazy bill, and I suppose the amendment would be a lazy amendment as well. But that shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the Constitution of the United States. We are the first branch of government. The executive branch is the second. They are the ones who declare the emergency. The burden is on them to justify the emergency. The burden is never on the people to justify the lifting of the emergency. They have an ongoing burden to show why they are impinging on people's liberty. So we have to, I really would I much prefer 30. That is plenty of time for Adelup to get their ducks in a row and come down to the legislature to tell us why they still need these various prohibitions. I have every faith that Adelup can do two things at once. They can continue the governance of the island within constitutional guardrails, and they can prepare to come down here and say, why are the businesses still closed? Why can't I travel freely on the island, et cetera, and so forth? They can easily do that. But if 90 days will get this thing across the finish line, I'll go for it. Or 60 days, 60 rather, thank you, Senator. 60 days gets it across the finish line, I'll support it. I think I've already said this, but I would congratulate Senator Duenas for coming forward again and again and again to champion the constitutional rights of the people and the prerogatives of the 37th Guam Legislature. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Anyone else on the amendment? If not, are there any objections? Or Senator Barnett, would you like to close or call for the vote? On the amendment, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Senator Barnett, you still have the floor for a couple of minutes. Okay. On the main motion, anyone else wishing to speak? Speaker Therese Terlai, you are recognized on the main motion.
Thank you very much. And I hope no one minds if I use my notes. I just find I want to stick to the facts, so I want to make sure those are absolutely in front of me all the time. But I support parts of this bill. I especially support the part where the bill allows that the legislature is going to, after 60 days, have to concur with an emergency declaration of the governor. The reason why I support that, I've supported it all through my terms here, and that is because I believe it's imperative. It's imperative for the people of the Guam that the legislature be briefed on everything that leads the governor to declare an emergency. If there are threats to the health and safety of the people of Guam, the legislature should know about those immediately. They should know about them firsthand, not fourth hand or all the way down the line. It is up to the legislature at that point to determine if policy needs to be changed and to act swiftly if that is necessary. But I don't see why any governor would be so adamant against the legislature being briefed. Because when the legislature's briefed, the public is briefed. And I think briefing the public is absolutely going to help us in emergencies with credibility and cooperation. That's the crisis we were having. If there are medical personnel that the governor's relying on, Why shouldn't we hear from those same medical personnel? If we are demanding that the people of Guam change their behavior, not see their families, then why can't we hear the information directly? So I very much support that legislative concurrence will take place 60 days after declaration of an emergency. This is a public health emergency by the governor, by the way, that this applies to. I also agree with the bill that it states the rights of individuals during emergencies and at all times. I support the part of the bill that talks about the replacement costs of the items if they are seized, especially I think this is if they are seized unlawfully. But yet the bill still allows public health to seize those items that are unlawful, illegal, prohibited and banned by federal law. The part of this bill that I just don't support is the parts where it reduces the penalties that are currently in statute during a public health emergency from a misdemeanor to a civil violation punishable by a fine not to exceed $25. And to be more specific, this only applies during public health emergencies for violations of quarantine and isolation. We went through an entire court case, not just us, but other parties, challenging public health, quarantine, isolation, and the governor's quarantine and isolation during the pandemic. And the Supreme Court told us, pursuant to the Organic Act, that is strictly the governor's power. My issue is the $25 penalty for violation of quarantine. I do not believe that that gives the authority that is needed to prevent the spread of disease. And quarantine has only rarely been implemented on Guam, and in our lifetimes only during the pandemic. I mean, on a large-scale basis. Otherwise, these are procedures recognized throughout where quarantine is allowed by almost every government. And it has to be enforced. I just don't think that $25 would serve as a deterrent to anyone. Especially we know how desperate we all were to go out and do things, to get together with each other, tourists to come in without being quarantined at a time when every country was facing mass deaths. So it's for that reason that I thank the author for the bill, but I cannot support this bill. Situas Masi.
Very welcome, Speaker Chirlay. Anybody else on the main motion? If not, Senator Frank Blas on the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak in support of the motion, in support of the bill. You know, I sat and I listened to the different presentations and the different reasons for why we should and why we shouldn't support legislation, and what concerns we had with the legislation. And You know, I need to take in context the difference between the legislation that was introduced in the 36th and the legislation that's introduced here in the 37th. In that, while similar, it gave us an opportunity to be able to, as was initially also presented, gives us the hindsight to see how we were operating in the midst of an emergency. Gives us that opportunity now to be able to, in the form of hot wash or in the form of evaluation, form of looking at how things operated, whether there can be an improvement. I say this because I recall and I can recollect some of the arguments against a similar piece of legislation in the previous legislature, and that one of the things was, why do you want to amend something that was put together by a Republican governor, or it was signed by a Republican governor? And I can say it this way. I want to thank that Republican governor, the Republican senator, for being able to introduce it and to sign it, because at least it gave us a template. It gave us something to be able to work with, to be able to evaluate, to be able to give us some semblance of order and then build from it. Because prior to that, there wasn't anything. Can you imagine what this conversation would have been today if we didn't have it? And it's because we had it, we had a rudimentary and very basic response or plan for response. It was in place. I bring this up because, you know, I remember one of the things, and as far as when we got into the state of emergency, one of the reasons why we're in state of emergency is because they're claiming this says we had no plan. I don't know, but I don't think I want to live in a society where there's no plan to deal with it. So as a result of what we've had to endure, what we've went through, we found some, for lack of a better term, flaws in the plan, and we're here today to be able to fix it. Yeah, I found it very interesting how it was presented on the floor that it's a lazy piece of legislation. No. This is legislation that helps us to work better. It helps to affirm what our role is as a legislature in a democratic society, in a democratic community, is responsible for doing. There's nothing lazy about that. That's doing our job. And in doing our job, sometimes we would have to question, and it is our role to question the desire of the other branch of government, the executive branch of government, and how they want to be able to rule. And I don't say those things lightly, because that's what was happening in the almost 3 years of consistent, constant executive orders. We began to wonder whether or not we lived in a democracy, because then, in a democracy where over the time that there was executive order after executive order, when was there a time that it gave the people that were being governed, that were supposed to have been being protected by, when did we give them the opportunity to speak their concerns or to give their ideas? That's our role. And if legislation to be able to ensure, to affirm what our role is in this system, in this democratic form of government, is lazy, what kind of government are we running? And it's lazy, and it's also very interesting to say that, you know, this wasn't a second attempt or a third attempt to be able to rein in the powers of the governor. When you weren't in the halls and you didn't understand what was happening here when it was first introduced, or similar legislation was introduced in the last legislature. It had nothing to do with laziness, at least on our part. So I think that, and I was going to go on a little bit more, but I choose not to digress. And I choose to move forward. I choose to, based on action, based on what has been an experience, based on what our responsibility is, I choose to vote in the affirmative for this bill. I choose not to be lazy and lackadaisical with my responsibility. I choose to improve upon statute to ensure that if and when we have to go through a similar situation, that the roles and the responsibilities of the branches of government that rule this community, that govern this community. I want to say from rule it, because we have to we govern it, we don't rule it. But so that we choose to avoid being ruled again, that in our responsibility as the government of this community, that we ensure that our people, the voices of our people, are heard, are considered. And that it's not, as was also stated by one of our colleagues, it wasn't a matter of questioning what was in the mind of one person. This is in what is in the best interest of one community. So I ask my colleagues, please, consider this action, consider the vote. Consider what our duties are, our role is in this government. And vote yes on Bill 7. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, Senator Lujan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I too rise in full support of Bill 737. Sounds like we're getting ready to take off. I rise in full support, and you know, Madam Speaker, I think what we've learned over the past, going 3 years now, because we went right from the pandemic to, recovering from pandemic to recovering from the typhoon. But I think what we've learned over the course of this pandemic, not only in our local government, but national government, is that there is an immense need for collaboration between branches. I can understand at the onset of the pandemic, no one alive on this face of the earth basically had faced it before. And there was a question and an unknown as to how to deal with such. So the world closed down. So I can understand that in the onset. But as months rolled by, again, as was mentioned previously, from masking to face shields to sanitation to even, because I myself was stuck in a foreign country for 14 months during the pandemic. And whenever you left the house and you came home, there was a place to bathe outside of the house, and your house and your clothes were taken to be washed and sanitized, and likewise you were as well. Cars will have to undergo the same thing as you move from one place to the next. And the rush for vaccines, and who was the first one to get it, and the best vaccine to get, and don't get this, don't get that, and all that. So there were a lot of unknowns in the very beginning. But as I said, in the months, we have learned, and even more so now, we have learned that a lot of the things that were imposed on the people were not necessarily the right thing and could have been done a better way. You know, it was said that, earlier it was said that, of course, that, you know, experts need to be consulted. Yeah, absolutely. But experts don't just occur or exist in one branch of government. And I think collaboration is what's needed in the expertise in all branches. Because what we have learned that one branch of government shut down the whole government. And not just the whole government, but the whole island, and all of our daily lives were put to a halt. It stopped. Everything stopped. But what did not occur in deciding to stop is, how do we restart? we're still in that phase because we haven't really recovered. And thank God for the federal monies. But still, the federal monies that arrived did not help a lot of the folks that, or businesses that closed down. So this bill, 737, calls for collaboration. I too much prefer a 30-day situation where you come down to the legislature, but I'll live with the 60. That's workable. That's all right. As you yourself, Madam Speaker, you said today is the 60th day of our recovery of this typhoon. So this bill by no means keeps the governor, whoever it may be, from coming down and collaborating with the legislature as to whether or not the health emergency should continue. And after 60 days, both entities, maybe even the third branch of government, because we would have gotten their point of view as well, because they were shut down, as to moving forward. And how best to do that. That's collaboration. You know, it was said earlier too that this bill is for lazy politicians. You know how ironic, because this branch of government is the closest to the people. It's the most responsive to the public's needs and opinions. And because of that, we are elected every 2 years, as opposed to the other branch of government is elected every 4 years. So you can see the responsiveness and the importance of this branch of government to be with the people's will, or to know the people's will. Because in 2 years, if you're not responsive, or you're not with the will of the people, they'll change you out. So again, Madam Speaker, I ask my colleagues to support this bill, because it's not, again, it's not about a particular governor. I mean, like I said, I just pointed out that not only in our local government, but our national government as well. There are a lot of things that we've learned. There are a lot of things that were imposed that now have been challenged and said we shouldn't have gone down that road. I mean, a good example, Madam Speaker, right now is we are debating the situation of school openings and whether or not the students will be, or the schools that won't open up in time will be subjected to online learning. Well, we've come to the conclusion, not just this body, but from parents and students and teachers, that online learning during the pandemic really didn't work. We got that from what we've learned through the pandemic. We've learned that. So that is why, in preparation of the opening of schools, we are very resistant to, or hesitant to impose the online learning, because of that fact of what we've learned, of what our students went through. How ironic again as well is that in the proclamation of the state of public health emergency, all branches of government were shut down. 3 branches of government were shut down. And it lingered and lingered and lingered. But again, we're asking, hey, can you proclaim a state of emergency for the Department of Education? Oh, I have no authority over that. Really? It's in the executive branch. But yet, your powers can shut down all 3 branches. How ironic. But I digress. So again, I applaud the author for the introduction of this bill, and I know, again, in the previous legislature that there was an attempt to pass the same bill. It got enough votes, I think, to pass, and then I think it was vetoed and could not be overridden. So I ask my colleagues again to please reconsider, or for the folks that were here this last or previous legislature, and my colleagues now, it's because we've learned through the pandemic, we've learned how to move forward in our efforts in handling situations such as this. And we've also learned that it's incumbent upon the administration, whoever they may be, to come to the people's house. The house that is more responsive to the people. It's directly responsive to the people. And collaborate with this branch of government as to what is going to be done and how to move forward. When there's collaboration and the effort made to collaborate, we will come to a result and to a resolve. Again, let me go back to Valley Forbes on Friday. No branch of government, no one person has the monopoly on ideas. And it's good to get into a heated and hefty debate, but not to hate, but to get along and remember who you're doing this for. This bill is not against an administration or a governor. This bill is pro-people. This is pro-people. It doesn't leave anybody out. It doesn't target one person. This is coming together. This is what democracy is about. This is what our government is about. To leave this body out of the equation is to leave the people's voices out completely. And again, this branch of government is the one that's most responsive to the will of the people of Guam. And that is why we have 2-year terms. So with that, Madam Speaker, again, I ask my colleagues to please support Bill 737. Give your vote of approval, and I also ask the author of the bill if I can be a second co-sponsor. With that, Madam Speaker, Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, any other senator would like to speak on the bill? On the bill? If not, sponsor may close on the bill. Senator Dueñas.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to take a recess until 2 p.m. this afternoon unless the body will accept an amendment that is being prepared that I would proffer that would do a restoration of a language and strike a language. Unless that doesn't seem proper, could we please get a recess until 2 p.m. this afternoon?
There's a motion to recess till 2 p.m. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We'll be recessed until 2 p.m.
Thank you,
Please
Madam
have your amendment in writing.
It will.
Ilinala Ipalawan, Sinya Bula, Minaletnya, Agan Bravo, Itata Taunya.
Yet cervical cancer continues to pose a constant risk to women today due to low awareness.
Cervical cancer pasiye masak lanmatan sa kontilokinyaki. Fingom somono, pap smear, and HPV vaccination isa na kashing tilokinya.
Dapat ko radil amla mugar. Ego mga laklangar radil. Nagtamarera da muraw usong ala. Yang raw gurula, ramak nitalakta, rektel aralir.
Ang mga babaeng may edad 21 pataas ay kailangang magpabaptes kada 3 taon.
Sa datin na sampartua, lari sa kwano, anana na tokin sila ng HPV.
Ewafisin, todo kuwan foundation, ato gariawak na test, may oposud, ewasemwet HPV. Erifefire sa rifirifit, iya patufit singeriare pagi. Ikkarin ni sakaw dari tentu burut nanabut me apat sakuren pefil medicine kirisam.
Tampatilin cervical cancer arangan prevent na fanabe fikachusarum movinial mabe unkotafulaika cervical cancer.
Ara komin matan fukokos.
Be a well woman.
Mga pakla badingiw.
Tufna rada pinipin ang raiwege da health rodat.
Piata li Caroline.
Dangin Meggat Itataw Tanya.
Maging malusog po tayong mga kababaihan.
Kitsvefi si puepeti veteresi Torres sawal geriri sits puepapatsakut. Take the first step to becoming a well woman and call Todu Guam Clinic today at 671-649-TODU to schedule an appointment.